Well, hey, good morning, everybody. We're here to start another course. This is Introduction to Paralegal. For those of you that are new to the paralegal program, I want to welcome you, which I imagine most of you are new. My name's Rob Dawalt. I'm one of the faculty members around the state of Indiana. I've been with the program now for 9 years. Started out my life in the law, many different jobs that I've had over time, which I kind of explained to you in a different video that's appended or above this one in your discussion board. What we're going to do now is to start getting down into the nuts and bolts of the law, and so this early part of the course will kind of demonstrate for you what I do, and that is I don't try to sit here and read the whole chapter of the book to you. What I do, though, is pick out things that I think are important to consider and just give you some general background and maybe underpinnings for some of the things that the author is talking about in your textbook. Your book is important in this class. I hope that you get one soon. This is the Hames and Eckern book. It's the 4th edition, I believe, now that we're working with. It's Introduction to Law, I believe is what it's called. And so we're starting right out here with Chapter 1. Let's give it a good look. Also, another thing that I tend to do when I do these little videos is I give you some like extra credit assignments. So if you notice, I mentioned in the discussion that on top of what you see there as far as just introduce yourself and so forth, I want you to go to your local newspaper and pick out a story about any kind of a case. Criminal case, civil case, could it be a car wreck, anything like that you want to write about. And what I want you to do is try to start practicing and learning how to brief a case. And so the briefing of a case is what we call the FIRAC method or the IRAC method. It's pretty popular, and what that is, the F's in FIRAC stands for the facts. So collect up the facts. You don't need to be extremely particular as far as what are the important facts, but it is supposed to be a brief, so don't make it overly wordy. The next part is the issue for I. I is the issue, and so there can be multiple issues in a case. Causation maybe, or some kind of a legal precedent. A lot of times it has to do with the legal precedent in that type of case. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say that there's a car wreck and your facts are that there's two cars that run into each other, and let us say that it's a four-way stop and neither car stops and they hit each other in the intersection. Well, the issue here would be comparative fault, most likely, because it sounds to me like both cars would be equally at fault. Now, let us say, on the other hand, that there's a road where there's only one stop sign, and the one driver fails to stop at the stop sign and strikes the other driver in what we call a broadside or T-bone type of an accident. Well, in that case, clearly, the driver that ran the stop sign would be legally at fault because the statute says that you have to stop at a stop sign. Another underlying thing that I always like to do is consider this from other angles, and that's the laws of nature. Like, for instance, the law of physics. One of the basic laws that you're going to run into physics in legal situations are that two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So under either approach, the statutory approach or the law of physics or the law of nature approach, the man in the car that ran the stop sign obviously violated both of those laws because he's the one that forced the situation by running into the other car and trying to occupy the same space at the same time. Now, getting back to briefing, we talked about the facts, we talked about the issue. The rule is the next part, and that's generally speaking, there's a basic rule in question, what generally happens. That's where this statute comes into play. So you could mention, that there's a traffic law statute, probably Title IX in Indiana, and it would set forth that, you have to stop at a stop sign. And you should be able to find that mentioned right in that case if that were your case. The other thing is you can always look it up online nowadays. You guys have such an advantage by having Google and different other tools at your fingertips so that you could mention the specific statute that the man violated when he ran that stop sign. Now we've got FIRAC, so we're at the A next. So the A stands for analysis. So analysis, some people put the word argument because you can put both sides of the argument in there if there are two sides to the argument. And then in conclusion, that would be the FIRAC, the C part, then you decide which of the two parts of the analysis, or at least two parts of the analysis, is correct. And so that's where you determine what was the outcome of the case and what did the court say was the proper outcome. And then, I mean, I'm okay with, if you want to argue your side, I'm happy to see that. I think that's good because you're doing some critical thinking. It's not just a robotic process where you're saying, here's the case, here's what happened, here's what the court said. Well, that's one way to do it. I see a lot of them that just a few words, the court affirmed. I really don't like that well, though. I'd really rather see you go ahead and expand on that a little bit and say, well, I kind of disagree with this because of, and then you can go into your own, thinking. So that maybe, let's say that there's a twist we could put on this little simple scenario with the guy that's driving the car that runs the stop sign. Let's look at it like this. Let's say that the guy that runs the stop sign supposedly actually did stop at the stop sign, looked both ways, was very careful, and then the victim or the other driver, that would be the plaintiff in the case, was driving so fast, like let's say 100 miles an hour, that he rushed into that space that can only be occupied by one person at one time. And so it's totally unforeseen, totally unexpected that somebody would be traveling, let's say, in a 30-mile-an-hour zone at over 100 miles an hour. And actually you see these kind of cases. Of course you see kids that are drag racing and so forth, but sometimes I've even seen them with police officers. They have to use some kind of reason in determining just how fast they need to go in order to get. They have to operate that vehicle safely at all times, even though they're responding to an emergency. So just how much latitude should they have as far as exceeding the speed limit in an urban zone where we shouldn't have all this like fast driving? Well, hey, moving on. So you see what I want from you is these FIRAC type approaches. And I'm going to want you to do a bit of a FIRAC on some kind of an article that you find in your newspaper. Easy one would be criminal case. Harder one might be, for example, what I just mentioned, this T-bone type case where a car seems to have run the stop sign, but did they run the stop sign? So something to look at. Well, hey, look at page 4 in your book and consider this case, Exxon Shipping versus Baker, and that's a 2008 case. It's in volume 544. I just about bet you if we looked we could find the actual page number. And it talks about March 24th. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but Valdez ran aground. There's some suggestion that the captain had been drinking some alcohol. Apparently there was a definite degree of negligence here. It fractured the hull, had a huge amount of crude oil that spilled out into Prince William Sound. There was a punitive damages award of $2.5 billion. And then in 2008, the U.S. Supreme Court reduced the amount to $500 million from $2.5 billion. So, I mean, right there, is that proper or not? Basically said that maritime common law indicates that there is no precedent for that large of a punitive damage award. And I think there's a lot of judges, and especially conservative judges, that are pretty much basically opposed to punitive damages. So basically what we want you to do is dig into that a little bit more and talk a little bit about the Exxon Shipping case as well. So work on something in your local newspaper. share it with all your student friends in the discussion board, and then take a strong hard look at this Exxon shipping case. If you don't do anything, just find me the page number there that's blank in your book, and it shows me that you did a little bit of outside research. But also I'd like to see your commentary on that. So, get started on this. This is good. Some of this is just ungraded things, but we just want to see if you're really getting a handle on what we're doing here. You can always get a hold of me if you have questions or problems. Rob Dawalt at me.com is my outside email address. In the case of an emergency, which is just a really serious thing, injury to a family member, somebody's really sick, death in the family, whatever, call me. 765-506-7322. So the email, robdawalt at me.com, you can always get me on that, in addition to the school email, plus also telephone me if there is an absolute emergency, 765-506-7322. Thanks very much for watching. We'll be back with many more of these in this class. I hope this helps you in some way. We're just trying to enhance the online setting by adding video lectures like this. You can look on YouTube and see that I have a number of these, 160 or so. You can always refer to them as a source that you can use. It's free, it's open to the public. So if you're taking some other class, you've got some other questions, you see something there that might be helpful, feel free to view it. Alrighty, well hey, thank you. Keep on watching, and I'll keep on putting up hopefully some useful information. Thanks again.